You're looking to get informed, right? Get the real story on a topic,
Yeah.
but without digging through tons of data yourself.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're taking a deep dive into the global market for, well, pig vaccines, porcine vaccines in 2025.
Right. Forget the hours of reading. We've chewed through the Global Porcine Vaccine Market Report 2025 from Cognitive Market Research.
Excellent.
And we've basically pulled out all the key stuff, the essentials for you.
And this is, it's a pretty big market we're talking about. The report estimates the global size at what, USD 1862.6 million in 2025.
That's the number, almost $1.9 billion. But, the really interesting part is where it's headed.
Okay.
They're projecting some serious growth. The forecast is it'll hit USD 858.50 million by 2033.
Wow, okay. That's quite a jump.
It is. It works out to a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of about 5.50% between 2025 and 2033.
Right, CAGR, so like the average growth each year over that period.
Exactly. Assuming profits get reinvested, that's the kind of steady climb we're looking at.
So, consistent, significant growth. You said this report is pretty thorough, over 250 pages.
Oh, yeah, it's comprehensive. Base year 2024, historical data back to 2021, and then forecasting out to 2033. Lots of detail.
Got it. So our mission today is really to map this out, understand the current size, the future growth.
And, crucially, why? What's driving it? We need to unpack the key factors, the regions, the diseases, the tech involved.
Perfect. So, starting point, USD 1.86 billion in 2025. Destination, nearly USD 3 billion by 2033, climbing at 5.5% annually. What's the main engine behind this?
Well, the report really points to the overall growth in the animal healthcare industry itself. It's a big piece of it.
Right.
As we, get better at understanding animal health and realize the economic payoff of preventing disease,
Right.
the demand for things like porcine vaccines just naturally goes up. It's about protecting assets, essentially.
That makes perfect sense. Keep the pigs healthy, keep the pork supply chain strong.
Yeah.
So where's the biggest chunk of this market right now, geographically speaking?
In 2025, North America is the leader. By quite a bit, actually. Over 40% of the global market share.
40%, wow.
Yeah, that translates to roughly USD 689.16 million. And they expect continued growth there too, though maybe a bit more moderate, around a 4% CAGR through 2033.
Okay, North America leading the pack. Makes sense with their big ag sector. What about Europe?
Europe's also a major player. They hold over 30% of the market share.
Okay.
So that's about USD 540.15 million in 2025. Between North America and Europe, you're looking at the bulk of the current market.
Right, the established heavyweights. But I thought I saw something about really strong growth potential somewhere else.
You did, absolutely. The Asia-Pacific region, APAC, is really interesting.
How so?
Well, right now, they've got around 23% of the global revenue. That's about USD 447.02 million for 2025.
Still significant.
It is. But the kicker is the growth rate. They're forecasting an impressive CAGR of 8.2% through 2033.
8.2%. That's really taking off compared to the others.
Exactly. It suggests a market that's not just growing, but really accelerating.
What's fueling that kind of growth in Asia Pacific? Is it just sheer volume?
That's part of it. We'll get into the drivers more, but think rising pork demand in many APAC countries, plus a big shift towards more, let's say, industrialized pig farming, intensive farming.
Okay, got it. And the report covered other regions too, right? Even if they're smaller shares.
It did, yeah. Just for completeness, South America has over 5% share, around USD 70.78 million, growing at 6.2% CAGR.
Right.
The Middle East is smaller, around 2%. That's USD 74.50 million, but growing faster at 6.8% CAGR.
Interesting. Higher growth rate there.
And Africa holds about 1%, around USD 40.98 million, with a 5.8% CAGR. So yeah, smaller shares now, but still showing decent growth potential.
Okay, so the big picture. North America leads now, Europe's strong too, but Asia Pacific is the one really accelerating. Let's dig into why this market is expanding globally. What are the core drivers?
Well, a major one, maybe the most direct one, is just the increasing frequency of swine diseases around the world.
Makes sense.
As these diseases pop up more often or spread more easily, the need for good prevention, like vaccines, becomes critical. It's about protecting the herds and, frankly, the economics of pork production.
More disease threat, more need for vaccines. Pretty straightforward. What else?
Another big factor is simply that people are eating more pork globally.
Ah, okay. Demand side.
Exactly. As global pork consumption rises, especially you see this in developing economies, there's more pressure to ensure a steady, healthy supply. Vaccines are key to that stability.
So growing appetites mean growers need to keep their pigs healthier. You also mentioned how pigs are farmed.
Yeah, that's the third key driver, the expansion of industrialized, large-scale pig farming.
How does that drive vaccine use?
Well, when you have huge numbers of animals together in close quarters, disease can spread like wildfire if it gets in.
Right, higher risk.
So for those big operations, really proactive health management, including solid vaccination plans, isn't just nice to have, it's essential to avoid potentially massive losses.
Makes sense. Concentration increases risk, so prevention becomes paramount. Now, it can't all be smooth sailing. Are there challenges? Things holding the market back?
Yeah, the report points out a couple of key restraints. One is just the sheer cost of developing new vaccines.
R&D costs.
Exactly. Getting from basic research through testing, approvals, it's a long, very expensive process.
That's true for any new drug or vaccine, I suppose. What's the other hurdle?
The other challenge is keeping up with the diseases themselves, especially emerging diseases or existing ones that mutate.
Like an arms race.
Kind of, yeah. The industry is constantly playing catch-up sometimes, trying to develop effective vaccines for new threats as they appear. There can be a lag.
So high development costs and the challenge of evolving pathogens. Okay. What about the flip side? What are the big trends shaping the future of this market?
There's some really cool stuff happening with the technology itself. The report puts a big emphasis on the rise of recombinant and DNA vaccines.
Recombinant and DNA. It sounds high-tech.
They are. They represent more advanced ways to make vaccines. Often they're more effective, potentially safer, and they can trigger a really specific immune response.
How do they work, basically, compared to older types?
So recombinant vaccines use genetic engineering to make just specific bits of the pathogen, the antigens that the immune system needs to recognize.
Okay.
DNA vaccines take it a step further. They introduce a bit of genetic code into the animal cells, telling those cells to make the antigen themselves.
Wow, using the pig's own cells.
Right. It can lead to really targeted immunity, potentially stronger protection, maybe fewer side effects. It's cutting-edge stuff.
Fascinating. Any other major trends?
There's also this growing demand for what are called autogenous vaccines.
Autogenous?
Yeah, think of them as custom-made vaccines. They're developed specifically for the disease strains found on one particular farm or maybe in a specific local area.
Personalized medicine for pigs.
Sort of, yeah.
Right.
They can be really valuable when you're dealing with a unique local outbreak or a strain that the standard commercial vaccines don't cover well.
Very interesting. Okay, let's shift focus a bit. The report breaks things down by the specific diseases these vaccines target, right?
It does. And the big one, the largest segment, is expected to be for porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, PRRS.
PRRS. Sounds serious. Why is it such a dominant part of the vaccine market?
It has a massive economic impact, just huge. It hits pigs in two ways, causes breathing problems in the young ones, and reproductive failure in the sows.
Oof, that's costly for farmers.
Absolutely. Big financial losses. Plus, the PRRS virus spreads easily and it mutates readily. New strains keep popping up, so you need constant widespread vaccination to try and keep it under control.
A persistent, expensive threat. What kinds of PRRS vaccines are most common now?
Well, there's strong demand for both the modified live vaccines and the inactivated ones, especially in the big pork regions, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific.
Okay.
And like we were just saying, there's a lot of work going into those newer recombinant and DNA approaches too, trying to get even better protection against PRRS.
Got it. So PRRS is a major target. What's the next big disease area the report highlights?
That would be porcine circovirus-associated disease, or PCV80, and this one is flagged as the fastest growing segment.
Fastest growing. Okay, so maybe not the biggest overall yet, but gaining importance quickly. Why the rapid growth here?
PCV80 really hits productivity hard. It causes pigs to lose weight, it weakens their immune systems.
Making them vulnerable to other things.
Exactly. More susceptible to other infections, and it leads to higher death rates overall. The main virus involved, porcine circovirus type 2, PCV2, is basically everywhere pigs are raised.
Global presence.
Right. Especially North America, Europe, APAC. That widespread nature is really driving the push for more PCV2 vaccination.
So it's a widespread threat to pig health and farm profits. That explains the demand. Are there specific vaccine types leading the PCVD charge?
Yeah, vaccines targeting PCV2 specifically are seeing increased use. And there's also a trend towards combination vaccines.
Ah, the multitaskers again.
Right, vaccines that protect against PCVAD plus other diseases in one shot. It's just more efficient for herd health programs.
Makes sense. Convenience and broader protection. Does the report mention other diseases?
It does, yeah. It covers others like diarrhea, swine influenza, arthritis, bordetella rhinitis, and a category for others like CHRS, leptospirosis, and so on.
So a range of targets.
Definitely. While PRRS and PCVD are the biggest pieces in terms of market value and growth right now, these other vaccines are still important parts of the overall picture for managing specific health issues.
Okay, we've covered the diseases. Let's pivot to the technologies behind the vaccines. The report segments by tech type too.
Correct. And the biggest slice of the pie currently belongs to inactivated vaccines.
Inactivated. The traditional approach, right? Why are they still holding the largest share?
Mostly because they have a really good track record for safety. They're stable, and they work effectively against a lot of swine diseases.
How do they work again?
They contain the pathogen, the virus, or bacteria, but it's been killed, so there's no risk of the vaccine actually causing the disease.
Oh, okay. Safe.
Right. But it still triggers a good protective immune response. They're used for things like PCVAD, classical swine fever, PRRS.
What keeps driving demand for them?
Well, improvements in adjuvants, the ingredients that help boost the immune response that helps.
Mm.
Also, more regulatory approvals, and critically, they are seen as very safe for pregnant sows and very young piglets. That's a big factor in the major regions.
Safety for those vulnerable groups is key. Okay. Now, we talked about recombinant vaccines being the fast growers. Let's revisit why.
Right. So as we touched on, their rapid growth comes down to, well, really good effectiveness, good safety profiles, and that ability to generate a very specific targeted immune response.
The genetic engineering part.
Exactly. By making just the key antigens, they can often give strong protection with potentially fewer side effects than some older vaccine types.
A more precise tool. Which diseases are seeing more recombinant vaccine use?
They're increasingly used for PCV2, classical swine fever, and PRRS.
And what's pushing their adoption?
Several things. More regulatory green lights, definitely. Also, there's a big push in agriculture to reduce antibiotic use, and better vaccines help with that.
Ah, prevention over treatment.
Precisely. Plus, just a general move towards more biotech solutions in animal health. And you see a lot of R&D focus on this in Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America.
Makes sense. The antibiotic reduction angle is huge. Did the report mention other tech types briefly?
It did. Live attenuated vaccines, toxoid vaccines, conjugate vaccines, DNA vaccines, they're all mentioned.
So, toolbox.
Pretty much. While inactivated and recombinant are the current leaders in size and growth, these other types are important too, for specific situations, and they're areas where innovation is still happening.
Fascinating mix of technologies. Okay, final piece of the segmentation puzzle. Who's actually buying these vaccines? The end users.
Right. And no surprise here, the biggest segment by far is hog production farms.
The farmers themselves. Makes sense.
Absolutely. For them, effective disease control is just fundamental to keeping their herds healthy and productive. They use vaccination programs routinely to cut down the financial hit from diseases like PRRS, PCV, CSF.
It's a core part of their business model.
Totally. And you also see trends like stricter biosecurity on farms and that consumer demand for antibiotic-free meat. Both those things push farms towards relying more heavily on vaccination for prevention, especially in North America, Europe, and APAC.
So it's about herd health, economics, and meeting market demands. What's the other major end user group?
The report highlights veterinary hospitals as a rapidly growing sector.
Vet hospitals. Why are they a growing customer base?
Well, vets are central to managing herd health, right? They handle prevention, diagnosis, treatment. They're key in administering vaccination programs for all these diseases.
Right, they provide the service.
And as vaccines get more sophisticated, like the recombinant and inactivated ones we discussed, and as disease pressures maybe increase, the role of the vet in designing and implementing those programs becomes even more critical.
So farmers rely on their expertise.
Increasingly so. Plus, things like regulatory compliance for vaccinations, implementing farm biosecurity plans, vets are often heavily involved. So their role, and thus their use of vaccines, is growing, especially in those major pork regions.
Okay, so the farms are the biggest buyers, but the vets are a crucial and growing channel. Let's zoom in on some specific countries. The report had regional highlights.
It did, yeah. Some interesting examples. Like in North America, the U.S. market alone is pegged at USD 543.75 million in 2025.
Wow, the lion's share of North America.
Pretty much. Growing at 3.8% CAGR, driven by, strict disease control rules and just high pork consumption.
Makes sense. What about in Asia Pacific? We talked about the region's growth.
China is the giant there, obviously, world's largest pork producer.
Right.
Their vaccine market is estimated at USD 187.75 million in 2025, growing fast at 7.7% CAGR. A lot of that demand is driven by the need to fight things like porcine epidemic diarrhea and, critically, African swine fever.
ASF. That's been devastating.
Yeah.
Understandable driver. South America.
Brazil's the key market there, about USD 30.29 million in 2025, growing at 6.8% CAGR.
What's boosting Brazil?
The report points to government immunization programs helping out. Plus, Brazil is a major pork exporter, so keeping herds healthy for export is vital.
Government support and exports. Got it. And quickly, Middle East and Africa.
In the Middle East, Turkey is mentioned. Market size USD 5.96 million, but growing at a nice clip, 7.4% CAGR, driven by their expanding livestock sector and more focus on disease prevention.
Okay.
And in Africa, Nigeria is highlighted. Smaller market, USD 3.28 million, growing at 6.0% CAGR. That's fueled by expanding pig farming there and the basic need to prevent major disease outbreaks.
It really paints a picture of how different factors matter in different places, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a global market, but with very distinct regional dynamics.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways. We've got a big global market for pig vaccines, nearly 1.9 billion USD in 2025.
And it's set for solid growth, heading towards almost 3 billion by 2033, driven by more disease, more pork consumption, and bigger farms.
Right. And while North America and Europe are the current leaders, Asia Pacific is showing really powerful growth potential.
Definitely the region to watch for acceleration.
We also saw how technology is evolving, with things like recombinant vaccines becoming more important.
And a growing focus on prevention, both on the farms themselves and through veterinary hospitals playing a bigger role.
It really feels like a dynamic area within animal health.
It absolutely is. All these factors, disease pressure, market demand, technology, they're all interconnected and pushing this market forward.
So as you, our listener, think about all this multi-billion-dollar market, the regional shifts, the tech advancements, maybe consider the broader implications. What does this signal for global food security?
Yeah, and how do these trends affect the actual economics of farming? What does it mean for future research in animal health?
And maybe think about what comes next. With new diseases always possible and this increasing focus on, sustainable and responsible farming, what new challenges or maybe opportunities might pop up as this market keeps changing?
It's definitely food for thought. The evolution of this market touches on some really fundamental issues about how we produce food and manage animal health globally. Definitely something worth keeping an eye on.